Hello, I'm the Overtired Teenager here, and this is the first episode of a series on my channel called Audible Dumpster Diving, where I, the Overtired Teenager, go on Audible and try to find the good out of the burning dumpster fire that is Audible fantasy. And this is usually going to find itself in the genre of lit RPG, but that's not all that this series is going to be, just talking about lit RPG and the myriad books that comes from it. There's going to be regular fantasy, there's going to be non-lit RPG fantasy. It's mostly going to be fantasy, but I might do a curveball and do non-fiction, but that's probably not going to happen. Anyway, the story. What is the story for today? It is He Who Fights with Monsters, a currently 11 book series right now, which is going to be continuing. And it was the first book series that I read on Audible. So it's the first book I'm going to be talking about on my YouTube channel. Now, I've mentioned lit RPG a bunch now, and if y'all don't know what lit RPG is a literary RPG where sections and tropes of RPGs are transferred to the written form. So it has a lot to do with stats, stat progression, stat blocks, like, your day-to-day RPG, but now in written form, and since this is Audible, now in spoken form. So that is a lit RPG, and He Who Fights with Monsters in a lit RPG. There are stat blocks, there are progression, there are different powers and a stat screen. Since this is my first one, I thought that this was going to be the standard. It was not. And I say that as a good thing. He Who Fights with Monsters is a very good introduction to the lit RPG genre, because it didn't have a lot of the flaws that a lot of the rest of the genre has. So, what is He Who Fights with Monsters? He Who Fights with Monsters is an isekai where our main character dies and gets transported to a different world, and he has to learn to survive in that world, and he gets magic powers because of it. Though the setting leaves much to be desired, honestly, because Palamustis, the world that our main character, Jason Asano, by the way, his name is Jason Asano, our main character, finds itself in is Palamustis, and it's just Earth, but slightly different, and has magic. So a lot to be desired there, but he gets transported to another world. He wakes up in the middle of a state, and he has to learn to survive from there because, surprise, they're cannibals and they're a ritualist. Well, to say that he died, I don't think he actually died. I think it was a summoning ritual gone wrong. So instead of him well, he did die, but it was because he got summoned instead, and it was an accident. That whole plot point gets brought up in different books, but for the first book, what we're talking about right now, he gets transported to this different world. He's in a state with cannibals and ritualists or whatever, and he has to learn to survive. Cool. I glossed over him, but our titular bitchular, thank you, Amanda, for that term. Our titular bitchular is Jason Asano, and he is a ex-political science major who is working a dead-end job, right? A very common backstory for a lot of the characters that you will see in the lit RPG genre. But yeah, he gets transported, and I find Jason Asano to be a very interesting character. He is very different than other main characters in other series, and he's just very interesting. He's one of the underdogs, right? He does not know this world. He does not know anything that has to do with the magic system, which I will talk about later. He doesn't know anything about this world. He doesn't know anything about anything, but he knows people, right? And so he uses his underdog status and he uses his knowledge of people to win a lot of seemingly unwinnable situations, right? Of course, he doesn't do this alone. He has a group of misfits, a group of friends, and more of his like group, his clique gets introduced in later and later books. But I'm just gonna tell you the whole friend group whole. He doesn't have this friend group in the first book, but he's gonna have it by the end of the series, right? So there is Jason Asano, himself, of course. There is Humphrey Geller. There is Clive, standoffish. There is Belinda, don't know her last name, and there is Sophia. And so I guess I need to describe them, right? So Humphrey is he's a noble kid. He only sees the world in black and white, but Jason teaches him that there are shades of gray in this world. Clive is a bookish magic user, which, you know, he likes research. He's very, actually, let me put on my glasses. Clive is great. You have Neil. I forgot about Neil. Neil is the healer. He doesn't matter. Neil doesn't matter. There's Sophia. She was an underground like fighter, and she did everything she takes to survive, and she was also a thief. And she was a thief with her partner Belinda, who is like Clive in that she tinkers with magic, but her, like, while Clive is book smart, she is very street smart with magic. She could take a toothpick and some duct tape and like figure out some magical formula. Cool. And that's his group of friends, that's his group of companions, and that's who he takes to like discover the world or whatever. So now that the characters are out of the way, I want to talk about my first impressions of the first book when I read it a long time ago, right? Like right now, I'm at like 200 books read. So this was a long time ago. But my first impression of the book is that it was excellent. It was wonderful. Like, I loved every second of it. I think it was a very good introduction to the series. It was a very good introduction to the lit RPG genre, and it showed us a lot about our characters that I will talk about later gets kind of retconned away, kind of just got shoved away and deleted as the series progressed. But right now, the first book was excellent. He woke up in the ritualist like estate or whatever. Some hijinks ensue, and we get introduced with the magic system, which is essence, right? So there's these things called essence stones. The magic system is very random. You can't predict what it's gonna do. You can't predict where it's gonna go. And I think it has its ups and downs, but I think the magic system is overall a pretty okay addition. So after Jason discovers the magic system, he escapes with the help of 3 people, Rufus, Bella, and Gareth. And they're a separate team, and those 3 serve as his mentors as he leaves upon the wider world or whatever. And so, like, after they rescue him and he rescues them, more hijinks. Anyway, they go to the main setting of this book, which is Greenstone, which is like a frontier nation, very much low density magic, very much starting town, right? If you know RPGs, they're very much the starting town. Not too strong people, not too strong monsters. You get it. And he spends like a majority of his time in this town, discovering his powers, meeting Humphrey, one of his friends, and overall just learning how everything works. This is very much the tutorial book, and I think it does what it needs to flawlessly. So now that I've talked about the first book of the series, I want to talk about what I call the first half of the series, because to me, the book series is split up into two parts. The good part and the bad part. And this first half I want to talk about first because I want to talk about what made this first part of the series so good. Because after a certain incident, I'm not going to spoil it, after a certain incident that happens and he returns to Earth, everything kind of goes downhill from there, quality-wise. And I want to take a second to talk about what made the first half of the series excellent. Because the following books in the first half, after the first book, were also as excellent as the first, right? So the first book was a tutorial, and the second book, third book, and so on, all really brought together this world, really fleshed out its characters, and really fleshed out the main character, Jason Asano. And section of the book, the first half of the book does really well, is character arcs. Excellent. Starting off with our main character, our titular bitchular, Jason Asano. He goes through character arcs, obviously, but his character arcs are surrounded around this system. And another very interesting thing about this system as compared to other systems is that this system, the blue boxes, the notifications, the very gamified elements, are only there as a tutorial. They're only there to help Jason survive in this new world, right? The gods, basically, they're called different things by the story, but they're gods. The gods basically gave him this system and gave every translocated human or entity that moves between worlds a system to help them. And Jason unlocks more and more sections of the system, the more and more uses of the system, like a map feature, like a party feature, like an identification feature. But a lot of them are tied to his character growth, right? For example, Jason gains the party system aspect of his system. I'm using system a lot. So he gains the party aspect because he learns the power of friendship, basically, with Humphrey and Clive whenever they go out to fight monsters together. He learns and he gains an aspect of the system that is tied to his character growth. Because Jason was very loner. He's very good with people, but he's very a loner. He goes by himself a lot. And whenever he finds and understands the power of friendship, for lack of a better term, he gains the party system because of it. And tying the interface, the system, with character growth is such a fresh idea that I don't think I've seen in any of the lit RPG that I've read. And I've read a lot. But that's just Jason's character arc. Humphrey goes through a character arc. He no longer sees the world as black and white. Sophia and Belinda go through a character arc where they get out of their terrible situation. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, but they get out of their terrible situation and move closer to they get out of their terrible situation and they grow closer to Jason and his team after unlearning a lot of the fend for yourself mindset that they needed to survive back in basically the slums, right? And the first section is rife with character growth, right? And another thing that the first section does really well is the setting. I mean, the broad setting Palimustis is just Earth, but different with magic. Even though Earth also has magic, spoiler alert. But the settings, while they may be like uninteresting as compared to like shining cities in the sky or whatever, they're very character based. You know, the settings are very driven around characters and their progression, right? Like I said before, Jason is very good with people, and he uses this and his underdog status to get one over on vastly more powerful beings. Because this is a story where the magic can make you basically a god, right? Another thing that I find really impactful in the first half of this series is its simplicity. The magic system is simple. You have essences, you have progression. I didn't talk about progression yet, but I'm gonna circle back to it. And you have very understandable ideas. In the second half of the series, it's like a bunch of magical jargon. There's a bunch of like pages upon pages upon pages, chapters upon chapters upon chapters of trying to like explain very complicated ideas that just don't really work well. You know, in most series, in most shows, in most movies, they ramp up the complexity. They start you very simple and they ramp it up. But I think the second half ramps it up too much. And that's why I like the simplicity of the first section, right? You have essences, 4 of them. 3 make 1 equals 4. Very simple. The progression, you start at a normal human being, you get your essences, you go to iron, you work your way up from iron to bronze to silver to gold to diamond. 5 ranks that matter. And in order to work your way up through most of them, it's just hard work and dedication, doing your abilities over and over and over again, right? Very simple. But in the latter half, it's like astral beings, astral nonsense, like a lot of magical jargon that's being tossed around by characters. And you're like, okay, well, I don't live in a magic world, so I have no clue what y'all are talking about, right? So it's like, okay, I think we can tone it down just a little bit. I like the simplicity of the first section. Too long to watch. The next thing I like about the first section can only be like spoken of in like hindsight is how refreshingly normal all the characters are. I know I just talked about how characters are good, but what I want to talk about is the vibe of the characters. Like, they're realistic, you know? Sophia and Belinda don't trust the group at first, but that's not because of like they're not trustworthy. It's because they live in a very dog-eat-dog world, so they're untrustworthy. Clyde is a bookish mage, so he doesn't want to go to combat at first, not for any other reasons that he's not used to it, you know? He's a very much student bookish person, right? He doesn't go out and fight monsters. And especially Jason, he acts like a regular human being. A very charismatic human being. He's very good with people, like I've said ad nauseum. But, like, they act in such realistic ways that are very missed in the second section. And you can tell by my reaction that the second section is so like it's so bad. I'm sorry. Like these characters acting like real people and not caricatures is so refreshing. And I know that's due to hindsight because I've read I've read the second section, or I listened to because it's Audible. But it's a plus. Like, you will be refreshed by how realistic the characters are. And now we get to the big thing. I've been like hinting at it over and over and over again. It's the series downfall. The incident that makes this very excellent, character-driven, character-motivated piece of literature turn into whatever the second half is. Like, the change is very, very stark. There's a real stark difference between the first section and the second section, and there is a definite drop in quality. And so, to describe this downfall, I'm going to use a very YouTube-friendly numbered list. Starting from rank 3, I'll work my way up to rank 1. And the ranks describe, like, from ascending order, the worst parts of the second section. Something I'm going to now dub as the list of doom. 3. Number 3. The vibes are gone. The vibes are terrible. And in my notes, I put in parentheses, the magic is gone. And I think that underlines what I mean by vibes, right? The magic is gone. You know, again, like I told you before, the setting isn't known for its like glowing palaces of white or like floating castles or whatever. Greenstone is just a city, right? There's lots of magic in the city, but it's just a city at the end of the day. But even in the second half, it's like worse, you know? Even if Greenstone is just a city, it's different. But after the incident and Jason goes back to Earth, the separation, the thing that divides the first section from the second section, is whenever the incident happens and he goes to Earth, by the way. I didn't mention that, I don't think. But anyway, when he goes to Earth, everything is lost. You know, instead of like a magical city, it's normal, but that's because it's normal for the setting, right? To go from Magic City to normal city is very jarring. Jason pops up and it's like, we are here again. We are at Earth. And, you know, there's a moment wherever Jason discovers that Earth has magic too, but it's like worse because there's less ambient magic. But even then, it's still, look at my face. It's very, you know. So remember how I was talking about fleshed out characters in section 1? Well, you can throw all that away for section 2. It doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to go down the list of characters in order to show you the 3-dimensional, fully fleshed out characters to now. So Jason, the main character. Remember how I told you that he used like his ability to know people and his underdog status to win the day, like a good story? Well, now he's overpowered and can beat people several times stronger than him, and also talks to diamonds any type of way, because I guess we're just bad mouthing gods now, but whatever, it's Jason. And instead of using people skills to solve his problems, he uses edginess to solve his problems, and uses violence to solve anything and everything that happens to him. So, yeah, a downgrade. Down the list again. Humphrey. Remember, remember when I told you about Humphrey's character growth in the first section? Yeah, again, gone. No more character growth. Humphrey is Humphrey. I wouldn't say that he got worse, but he's the exact same. He's now dating Sophia, and apparently that's supposed to be his character growth. I guess he kind of serves as like a father figure or whatever, or that's what like Belinda said that he was that's the vibe that he was going for. But you know, it's Humphrey was a very interesting character in section 1, but now he's just there. I don't know what else you want me to say. He's just there, a very much saltine cracker type of character. Speaking of Belinda, Belinda is a klepto now. Whenever I first listened to those chapters, those sections of the book, it's like in the 9th book or whatever. So deep in the second section, I was flabbergasted, honestly. I was like, what are you doing? Because her kleptomania is completely slapped on. Like, from the previous however many books that she was in, she never dealt with this problem. Now, it's like, the author was like, what am I gonna do with her? She's a klepto now. And that was that. Like I told you in the Humphrey section, like Belinda and Humphrey like had a little spat because of it, and the whole conversation was useless. Like, completely. Belinda is still supposedly a klepto. She stole like 2 items, so I don't know how that makes her a kleptomaniac, but again, it's like we've fallen to such levels of depravity that I don't even know what to say. I am at a complete loss of words. Traits slapped on willy-nilly. I mean, I guess he was like having trouble. The author was having trouble like finding out what Belinda's role was going to be, and so he just gave her a character trait that didn't exist until 2 seconds ago, but whatever. Sophia, again, her only like meaningful character trait is now, the only meaningful character trait she has now is she used to love Jason. Even though, no, she didn't, because I was there. You can't gaslight me, Shirtaloon. I was there. She never had a fucking thing for Jason, but anyway. So now she did, but you know, the incident happened and then Jason went back to Earth, so now that's part of her character, I guess. She used to like Jason. Now she's in a relationship with Humphrey, so I suppose that's kind of like a relationship, I guess. But the relationship functionally doesn't matter because neither of the two characters change because of it. Again, the relationship is slapped on. It's slapped on is the theme of the second section, if you didn't realize, by the way. Neil is Neil, I guess. Like, he's there, I suppose. Again, remember when I told you in the first section? Neil was useless in the first section, and he's still useless now. So I guess you can call that bad writing, but I mean, it's consistent, at least. Everything else was like completely overturned and all of the characters are ruined, but at least Neil is still useless. Good job. You didn't mess him up, I guess. And Clive actually had an interesting character arc. Can you imagine that it happened off screen though? I mean, the singular character trait that Clive gained in after the incident happened and Jason returned to Earth and returned back, all happened on screen. The whole like magical like institution, he got like desensitized to it, and he was like, I'm no longer, I don't care about the magical institute anymore, and I'm gonna be my own person, and they're hiding something, and you know, it sounds interesting, like, ooh, intrigue, like what is happening in this institute that's causing Clive to be this way. You would think that would be a nice little section of the story that we can get of Clive uncovering the negative parts of the institute that he used to love so much. But no, it all happened on screen. So I mean, the only interesting character arc that happened in the second section happened off screen. So yeah, I guess fuck you, I guess. Like, imagine you're a reader or a listener, since this is Audible. Imagine you're a listener and you're listening to it and you're like, oh my god, I wonder, are we going to get Clive's character? No. You know what you will get though? The number one reason in the list of doom, the edge. You won't get good character arcs or good story arcs, but you will get edge. You will get a lot of edginess. Jason, what was once a nice, naive character, learns the grittiness of the world and becomes a bad person. And it's like, oh, this is bad. I mean, the edginess is by far the worst thing in the story. That's why it's number one, but it is by far the worst thing that ever happened. It completely ruins everything. Like, it causes every problem in the narrative. Like the vibes are off. The vibes are off because the edginess is now at 11, and then nothing matters anymore. 2, the characters are one-dimensional because the author is too focused on Jason and his edginess journey. Like, every single problem with this series can be laid at the feet of the intense, God, it's so frustrating. Like you're listening to these characters and you're reading about these characters or whatever, and you expect them to act a certain way because you know of how they've been characterized and how they've been shown in the story up to this point. That doesn't happen. Like, at all. It is just edginess all the way down. You know, and this is not to say that the story was never dark or whatever. The story was always dark. Again, Jason woke up after being summoned by like a cannibal organization or whatever. So in a section full of cultists. But that was never the main thing. It was always hidden underneath the ground. It was very low key, right? Because I think, me personally, I think what was important was a dichotomy between the two. Because whenever he woke up in that forest, in that estate, in the first book, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. There was grass everywhere. Everything was well manicured. It was beautiful. It was an idealistic version of Earth, right? An idealistic version of home living. And then it's only whenever he goes underground where he finds only when you dig deeper can you find the exploitation and all of the bones that this glowing paradise is built on top of. And reading through that dichotomy is what made the first section so interesting, because power has a corrupting effect, and reading through that corrupting effect and reading how this magic system corrupts people was interesting, right? But now it's edginess all the way down. To use my arcane example again, instead of like Piltover and Zaun being perfect opposites or whatever, it's now Zaun, and then beneath Zaun is Evil Zaun, and then beneath Evil Zaun is a secret place with like gods and astral beings or whatever called Extra Evil Zaun. It's so cartoonishly edgy that it's like, oh my god. Oh, what happened to Jason? I haven't told you this yet, but he was socialist. Oh my god. What happened? What happened to my socialist king? Why is he a loser now? Oh my god. And again, I didn't finish it. Well, I didn't say this before, but I didn't finish it. Like, I've read up to 9 books, but there are like 2 more that I have not deigned to listen to because I don't want more bastardization of my favorite characters. You know, I don't want to see Jason becoming worse and worse and worse. I don't want to see I don't want to see Humphrey, I don't want to see Belinda, I don't want to see Sophia ruined, their characters assassinated. I don't want to see that. So I just stopped reading it because God. But even if before I continue on that statement, I want to go about honorable mentions, because I think, honorable mention, there's only one, is how revolutionary the series was. Because again, this was my first lit RPG adventure, and when I tell you it gets worse from here, it gets worse. So number 1 of it's revolutionary, another list, of course, number 1 of it being revolutionary is the fact that the characters like go to therapy. If y'all know literature, if y'all know fantasy, y'all know that is unheard of. These people don't go to therapy, they just suffer. And it was so refreshing to see the characters go to therapy and then become better versions of themselves afterwards. Of course, that gets ruined in the second section, but what doesn't get ruined in the second section? Am I right? The second is that the main character isn't a loser. If you're going to follow this series with me, this series on my channel, Audible Nubs Are Diving, I'm going to be talking about a lot of these other lit RPG adventures. But whenever you follow me through that sea of garbage, right? Whenever you sail with me on that sea of garbage, whenever I make those videos, of course, you're going to see that the main characters are losers. I mean, they are the most depraved human beings possible, right? But Jason wasn't like that. Jason was arrogant. Yeah, Jason was a little bit too full of himself. But again, those are treated as like character problems and character flaws that he would have to work through, right? He was an honest to God, like, good and compelling character to listen to. Like, I liked Jason. I never liked these main characters. Again, I am 200 books in, right? I read a lot of this genre, and Jason was honestly one of the best characters ever, period, in this genre. And it was like, again, lots of hindsight, but even then I knew that Jason was special. And that's kind of, that also got ruined. And yeah, I think that was all I wanted to talk about. And yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to talk about today. Like, I'm now just revisiting those memories of how disappointed I was. But even if I was disappointed, even if the second section, the second half of this series is not all that good, I would still recommend the first half. Like, again, there's no spoilers. No major spoilers, anyway. There's a thing that happens. I've been calling it the incident. Whenever that happens, and you'll know, because it is very, like, it's very significant. So whenever that happens, after I think like the 5th book or something, don't listen to it anymore. But support the first half, because the first half is really good. First half is really, really good. Whenever you see, like, whenever you're on Audible and you finish reading a book and you think it's the incident, read the following book's like synopsis, and if it mentions him being on Earth, stop there. Don't buy that book. It not good. But anything and everything before that, excellent. 10 out of 10 want to recommend. The other half, not so much. But, you know. And to cap off this video, in the description down below, I am going to be dropping my, I guess you can call it an OC. Because whenever I was reading it for the first time, and whenever I read anything for the first time, I am a very creative person and I love making new things. And I also love, what I also love doing is like using another author's magic system to make my own. It's an OC, basically. And I'm going to put that out in the description below, and that's going to be in every single one of these videos of this series. Every single last one, I'm going to put it in OC and how I use a magic system in my own personal way, you know? For right now, they're just going to be in like a Google Doc, and of course they're going to be for free because I don't condone stealing from artists or writers. But soon-ish, maybe after a few more episodes of this series, I'm going to put it on my Patreon. Again, it's not going to be behind a paywall. You can just go click on it. But right now, it's just going to be in the Google Doc. So the future is the future. And yeah, thank you for listening to me kind of ramble about this series. I didn't have too much of a script here. I had like what I wanted to talk about, and I think it was really rough. I think this video was really rough. So I'll definitely have to, for other episodes of this series, I have to really get into what I want to talk about in more detail. But that's just behind the scenes shit. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And it's been the Overtired Teenager. I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace.